Okay, today we will be discussing Parshas Mishpatim. Again, we discussed in this Parsha the civil laws, the basic, monetary laws, laws between, damages, all these type of laws is what the Mishpatim really represent. And the first verse reads, Ve'ele ha-mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem. And these are the Mishpatim, the statutes, the ordinances that you shall place before them. Now, the rabbis tell us that this particular parsha, being the beginning of a new section, really should not begin with the letter Vav, which is a connecting letter to what preceded it. It's like starting a whole new chapter in a book, or even starting a whole new book, because from a certain perspective, each chapter, each parsha here is almost like its own little book. Right? Part of the oral tradition is to divide the Chumash into these sections, and each section is almost like its own, story with its own title and its own little mini book. So starting this parsha with the letter Vav is a point of question. The rabbis question it, and the answer they give is an indication to tell you that this parsha, although it's a new parsha, is connected with the previous parsha. Right, and this that there's a famous expression from the rabbis that tell us this. That Rashi even brings it here in the beginning of the Chumash. Kol makom shenemar eile. Whenever it says the word eile, which means these, it cancels what was before, meaning it's putting what was before aside, and this is a new beginning, a new start. Whenever it says ve'eile and these, it is to add. It's an addition to what was mentioned before. And the point of this teaching is Ma harishona misinai, just like the first set of rules we just got, which were the Ten Commandments, just like those rules we received from Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai, clearly coming from Hashem, so too what we're going to see now are from Sinai. And we have to ask ourselves a question. What is the connection between the fact that these Mishpatim, what do we gain by being told that these Mishpatim are from Sinai? That's what we want to appreciate. Now, at Sinai, what do we see? We saw a divine revelation. We saw God reveal himself to us and giving us essentially the first two commandments we heard straight from the mouth of Hashem, so to speak. I am the Lord your God, and you shall not have any other gods before me. We got the commandment to serve God and the commandment against idol worship. Now, we're taught that these two commandments, in essence, really can incorporate all of the commandments. Here we're mentioning the 10 as well. Many commentators talk about the 10 commandments in a general sense, including within them all of the commandments. But in addition to that, we're being taught over here a special message that the Mishpatim are from Sinai. And this is a very important message. Why so? What are Mishpatim? We started speaking about. Mishpatim are essentially laws that are intellectual laws, logical laws. And the rabbis tell us that the category of mitzvot in the Torah that are called Mishpatim, we did not essentially need the Torah to tell us about. We would have on our own come to realize ourselves most of these, if not all of these Mishpatim. Theft, civil law, damages, all of this, you go to any court around the world, and they have their set of mishpatim, their set of civil laws, ordinances, statutes. You can't build a building and block someone's view if he had the building there first. All these same laws that we have, you'll find them represented in one way or another by other countries. They all have it. So, but we're being told something unique over here. Just like the revelation of Sinai was clearly a divine revelation and not the result of any type of human participation. I mean, our job to participate is to listen, but when the human intellect and human participation had nothing to do with the inception of these rules and these 10 commandments. They're all clearly from God, part of a divine law that is part of a divine wisdom, which transcends, entirely human intellect and human limitation. So too, these civil laws, although given to mankind, given to the Jewish nation, in a structured system of logic that we would appreciate and understand, and we could almost convince ourselves that we could have made up these same laws, which we theoretically could have. We have to know that these same laws are from Hashem, and they're part of this divine revelation at Sinai. So That's the message, essentially. And that's why when you look at the structure of the Beis HaMikdash in Jerusalem, so the Jewish court, the Sanhedrin, which was essentially, like the Jewish court with the members dealing with all civil law, monetary damages, religious issues, and life and death situations, criminal law, all law took place in the Beis HaMikdash, in the structure of the Beis HaMikdash. Because by us, church and state do not separate. Really, church and state, church is, for lack of a better word, with using the term in America, there's a whole law in America for you, Jewish people, Israelis, which watching this. In America, you have to separate religion and state and government. Well, that's a direct contradiction to Judaism. Judaism is one unit. Religion and government are really one. Really, the Jewish leader is the king also at the same time, and he's in charge of the social and judicial issues of the country as well. It's not separate. They're all one issue in one unit in Judaism, and that's what we're being told over here. Ve'ele ha-mishpatim, these are the statutes to tell us that just like we have 10 commandments that we know came from God, and it's a revelation of divine wisdom, so too we have Mishpatim, civil law, which is also a representation of divine will. Now, with this, we can appreciate a few things. First of all, there's a law that would seemingly complicated, difficult to accept and understand unless we understand its depth. There's a law that says that one is not allowed to go to the court of another non-Jewish court, the court of any of the other nations, even if the decision would be the same. You have an identical decision, but you can't go. Right? So the question is, why not? If it's the same decision, why not? There's no logic behind not going to, let's say you live now if you live in America, so what harm is there to go to, we live in America, we'll go to the American court and let them decide for us what we should do. Two Jews, they got into a little dispute of monetary dispute, so we'll go let the judge, what's the Supreme Court judge, does he want to throw out any name? We'll go to him. He's a friend of mine. We'll go to him and he'll settle it for us. So why should the Torah say that you can't go to a civil court? You have to go to a Jewish court. What would we gain or lose, especially if in this context we're saying that it'll be the same decision?
It's the same decision. You're going to court because you don't know the answer.
That's a very good point you're making. But I see. So you don't know it's the same decision. Okay, I hear that. But
I assume it would be the same answer also.
Well, let's say each person thinks that they're right. So let's say I think right now the decision I'm going to get is going to be in my favor, and I want to go to the court. But I know that either court is going to give the same. Maybe convenience. Maybe I want to go to the civil court because it's easier for me. Whatever. Okay, you have a good question. They may be answering. They're mentioning that even if the decision will be the same, to tell you really the point. Meaning, obviously, the people that are going for judgment don't know what the verdict will be. That's why they're going to present their cases. But they might know the general principles. We know that this type of case, so the penalties are like this, the judgments are like that. They might know in general, and they can assume that the court will decide. Each one thinks that they're going to win. And they don't necessarily want to avoid losing, meaning if it would be that I know that the Jewish court's going to rule against me, so I want to take him to the civil court. So that's already, I have my reasons. But if I don't have that reason, I'm accepting whatever the decision is going to be, or I know that they generally judge the same way. So in those cases, I want to go to the civil one for whatever reason. So the law is you're not supposed to. You're supposed to go to the Jewish court. So according to what we started saying, that all civil law is really connected with Har Sinai, and it's an expression of divine will. So if you go to a civil court that's not connected with Torah, so no matter what they are going to tell you, the result of their verdict will only be from their own intellect. It will not be an expression of divine will or divine wisdom in a direct sense. It could be that they happen to agree in the end result, but they did not get to that end result in the same way that a Jewish court gets to the same result. We're taught from Chazal, the sages explain to us, that when 3 judges sit and judge a court within civil matters, and they make a true judgment, they make the right verdict, so they become a partner with God in creation. That's what the rabbis explain to us. Now, that aspect of judging truth and connecting with Hashem and creation doesn't exist in the same way with civil courts. It only exists with the Jewish court. And again, this links back to the 10 Commandments. Now, it's not coincidence that there were 10 Commandments. There were also, through 10 different utterances, God created the world. So there's a correlation between creation and the 10 utterances. and also the Ten Commandments and that revelation, in that they're both part of the revelation from Hashem. Now, when we connect with that revelation, the revelation at Sinai, which was Hashem revealing His will and His wisdom, through civil law, we're actually elevating our mundane civil behavior in this world. We're connecting that also to divine will. And that's specifically the gain in having a court, a system of court, in the holy of holy, in the holy Beis Hamikdash. Because one would think, and it's true in 90% of the cases, when you go anywhere around the world, there's nothing intrinsically holy in court. Court's not holy. Court's about a bunch of people fighting and arguing who's this and who's that, who gets that and who gets that. This is I'm right, you're wrong. When you take these mundane arguments, which are arguments rooted in selfishness, greed, lies, confusion, whatever the root of all these arguments are, when you bring them to Hashem, Lifnei Hashem at the Beis Hamikdash, by the Sanhedrin, or even any Jewish court has this power, you're taking your issues and you're presenting them before Hashem. Now, when the judges use the knowledge and wisdom of Torah to conclude a din, a verdict, that verdict is an expression of divine wisdom. It's part of Torah. It's not their own opinion. It's not their own decision. And by making our mundane activities in this world, by subjugating them to the decisions of Torah, we are actually connecting the mundane with holy. And that is why the Jewish court is in the Beis Hamikdash. That is a deeper lesson to it. And that, again, connects us back to the idea of Sinai. What was Sinai? When the rabbis tell us over here that these Mishpatim, these civil laws, are connected with Sinai, they're saying something very deep. Because first of all, what does the word Sinai mean? Does anybody here know what the word Sinai means?
Hate.
No, it's not from the word hate. Sinai is the name of a mountain that the Torah was given on. And they say that the word Sinai is linked with the idea of humility. That Sinai was a humble mountain. It was a humble mountain which facilitated God to come now and descend and let His presence rest on the mountain. Now, when there's no humility, there's almost no room for Hashem to a certain degree. And that mountain represents making a space, so to speak, in the world for Hashem. Now, when we have our own ideas and our own agenda in life, and we decide only based on what we think is right, what's right, and we're living our life 100% solely rooted in what we want and what we think, we don't create room for Hashem to the same degree that when we put our own knowledge aside and accept that even rational, logical laws ultimately are beyond us and above us, then we accept what the rabbi says and what the Beit Din says as the word of Hashem. Meaning we have to put ourselves aside in order to accept the laws that are otherwise logical as divine will and divine wisdom. It takes a level of self-abnegation that becomes a vehicle through which the divine will can rest and reside upon us and with us. And that's what essentially also lends to making these laws, these civil laws, holy, because we've allowed that it should be an expression of Hashem's rules instead of our own rules. And that's an added benefit in making the Mishpatim part of Torah. But getting back to the word Sinai, Sinai is actually numerically one of the methods of darshaning, of explaining Torah, is using the numerical value of a word. So the word Sinai equals the same numerical value as ladder. Now, we know physical ladder we climb, but the ladder we're talking about here, which is really the ultimate connection, we're being taught in a deeper sense what Sinai represented. Sinai represented a ladder that the Pasuk talks about in the very beginning with Yaakov when he had a dream. The ladder is rooted on earth, and then the top of the ladder is in heaven. What's unique about a ladder that is on the one end of it touching earth, but on the other end of it, reaching heaven? The unique thing about that ladder is that it fuses together the spiritual and the physical. The divine will and the divine wisdom of Torah in the physical, mundane activities of man. The ultimate expression of Torah is to unify and unite the two. And that is expressed in the most extreme way, in the most intense way, when we can actually draw down this lofty concept of divinity and of divine will into the lowest places, which is going to be when everybody is screaming and fighting in court, where they want to take each other's head off. You stole from me. No, you stole from me. It's mine. It's yours. When you can bring the light of Hashem into that level of our existence, that lowest of physicality, and infuse that with divine expression, that's the idea of fixing and uplifting the world in a much greater, more impactful way. And that's the deeper message over here, Ve'ela Mishpatim, Asher Tasim Lifneihem, that we allow these civil laws to act as this ladder which brings the world up to a higher level of existence. And when we live that way, we are, what we say, we're fixing the human experience in the world. We're taking the human mundane experience that is in this physical world, which is really not holy in essence and certainly not connected to Hashem, and we're reattaching it to its source. We're reattaching it to Hashem and to the holiness and the sanctity that really were the foundation, meant to be the foundations of creation. And that's what we accomplish over here. So just to make the main point we're trying to make over here is that through the Mishpatim, again, which are civil law, by accepting them from Hashem and turning to Torah for the guidelines in which to express and to follow these rules, we are facilitating that heaven and earth should connect in this way, which essentially means we're lifting up the world back to its more pristine state, which is what the purpose of Matan Torah is and continues to be. Okay, any questions on this point till now? Yes?
If there's, like in the United States, if there's no Jewish court available, are you allowed to go to civil court?
So that's an interesting question. In its detail, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But ultimately, you have to first go to the Jewish court, which they do still exist. And if they're not able to help you in the way that you need to be helped, they're being understanding of a person's needs and what the Torah really wants to become accomplished, will permit you to go to a civil court.
Jewish courts in the United States?
Sure, there's in the religious circles there is obviously judges and rabbis that are on the level. Each city has a bedin. In I know Montreal, Miami, New York for sure. All over there's different Jewish courts that you can go to, and they will permit you to go to civil courts in order to gain the results you need if they can't help you. But you need to first go to them for permission.
Okay, so but a Jewish court in the United States has no teeth. It has no way of actually enforcing its ruling.
It's called binding arbitration. If let's say you want to take another Jew,
Go ahead, say what
let's
it
say
is.
you want to take another Jew to religious court, you both sign an agreement with a U.S. court saying you're going to agree by what the base
Right,
decide,
okay, got it, right.
and then you're bound to it.
But what if it's a interfaith dispute? If you have a dispute with the non-Jew?
Okay, so again, when you have a dispute with a non-Jew, so the Jewish court don't have jurisdiction, and he's not obligated to go to your court. So
Then it's okay to go to
that's the deal. I'm talking Jew between two Jews. For sure, if it's a non-Jew, especially if he's the one that's taking advantage of you and you have to act fast, you're not going to wait. It's not applicable. It's only applicable with two Jews. And even in that case, if sometimes we're dealing with unfortunately dishonest people, whatever race they are, you have to act fast and go quickly to a rabbi that's qualified to tell you, look, in this case, we can't help you. You need to go and get help the way it's from the civil courts. But again, the ideal way is to get permission.
It has to be an observant Jew too who's going to agree to this.
Right. If it's a non-observant Jew, so it really might be just a formality to check what the current status, what the protocol is, what they have past cases where, so maybe it's already a standard law that if it's someone that's not religious at all and will not respect or listen to the Beis Din, so they know that they're not going to be able to help you, so they might direct you very quickly to a civil court, but you do need permission from them. And again, in this case, they'll give you permission right away to go to the civil court, because if it's someone who doesn't follow Judaism whatsoever, so then there's zero chance that he's going to go where you want him to go. However, now the problem could come up, interesting that you're mentioning it, in a case that I remember, where it's a person that's semi-religious. So on the one hand, he recognizes the Beit Din and he recognizes that a Jew's supposed to go there, but because of money, people don't want to lose their money. So in this case, you can't trust him maybe. So there you have to give the person the benefit of the doubt, and surely you're going to have to first try to summon him to a Beit Din, a Jewish court, and there it's a little bit tricky, because in the meantime, he might only care about trying to swindle you out of your money. Meanwhile, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying that perhaps he's going to come to me to a Jewish court. So there it's a little bit tricky. You have to be really aware of who you're dealing with and present it properly, because in that case, you have to let the Beit Din know as much as you can that this person's intentions are to swindle me, and they have to do their best to protect you. But if a person's religious, then for sure we assume that he's going to go to a Beit Din and accept what the Beit Din says, and then you summon him to Beit Din, and you have to wait till he comes to the Beit Din, and we try to work it out that way.
Although that's not always the case.
No, unfortunately, not always the case, but that's the general consensus.
This all applies by Jewish matters only.
Well, monetary matters. We're talking about monetary matters between two Jews. This is a matter of Jewish law.
It's not necessarily a Jewish matter, it's just involving.
Well, the Jews' money becomes a Jewish matter. This is a Jewish matter because it's their money involved.
I understand, but
Yeah, someone had a. I'm sorry, you were.
So because the laws of the Sanhedrin are so required of two witnesses to prior give warning or whatever, like that would never occur in the United States. So
Well-
if it's a criminal.
No. So don't forget, monetary law has also its structure. I mean, if there are no witnesses, then you need, and there's no proof to what your claim. So no court will help you. No, not a non-Jewish court, not a Jewish court. But contracts are legitimate contracts that are signed that can be confirmed.
Criminal, like if say some girl says like she was touched by like someone in the community. This community has like a very high reputation or whatever. Obviously, if you go to a rabbinical court, they're going to probably take favor of this person. There's no evidence.
They're not supposed to take favor of the person. They will use the laws of Torah that dictate you need corroboration. A woman cannot be able to, nor can a man be able to claim anything without corroboration, without any kind of proof. The Torah law is based on having some type of way to prove your claim. You can go up to anyone and say he stole $100 from me, and we can't take your word for it. So too in this case.
But in a criminal court, you could have evidence.
So there's a difference of what's considered circumstantial, what's not considered circumstantial, what the Torah acknowledges and what civil courts acknowledge. Of course, they're the different guidelines. But rabbis have the authority sometimes to see a need and to enact things and do things that are not necessarily within the official guidelines of Torah law, but in order for a specific need. If there's a very big need, for example, in this particular case, a sensitive issue like that, someone getting away with that, so certainly they're able to accumulate evidence and with the rabbinic authority they have, take action if necessary. And they've done. There are plenty of cases where the rabbis take action even if they're lacking the official two witnesses that are required for Torah law because they see a real need for the community and then they rabbinically take action. But in these cases, anyway, today, again, the Beit Din will tell you to go to the police or to the civil system because with these type of criminal offenses today, really they're not in a position of power to do as much as necessary. And like for example, again, it's also not agreed upon by every single court system, but some Batei Dinim will advise you in cases of doubt or in cases where things come up, right away to turn to the authorities or to at least the Jewish leadership that is going to be responsible for making sure that we protect the innocent victims. This comes up more with children at risk, but we have to protect and do everything we can and to do that. Okay, I think we're time for one or two more questions.
When does Dina de Machus Dina apply?
Dina de Machus Dina is essentially mainly applicable to when you're in another country. For example, here we're in Israel, and here that law doesn't necessarily apply in Israel in the same way that it would apply in America. And essentially, without getting into the details, you're supposed to follow the official rules of a government, of a rulership, as long as they don't contradict the Torah. For example, we'll bring one bad news for everybody that likes to cheat on their taxes, but officially, one is not supposed to really cheat on their taxes if they're in America, so you're not supposed to just go ahead and cheat on your taxes. Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of the great poskim, say clearly that one is really ideally not supposed to do such a thing because the laws of America are legitimate laws, and if they're not contradicting Torah, one must acknowledge them and try their best to follow them.
Ideally, would the Torah condone that?
I'm saying it in a soft way, but you're not allowed to cheat on your taxes, basically, according to what we're saying. Okay, we'll wrap it up.